I know you guys have made a lot of, written a lot of movies that seem to be a common theme, and just to share a few, People vs. Larry Flint, Man on the Moon, Autofocus, and now Big Eyes. I think if there's anything that, anything in common, it would be maybe that these are sort of outsiders, unusual, eccentric, sometimes sort of people. And is that been a conscious?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, because we found usually biopics are kind of like a really kind of dull genre. They're like 3 hours long, and so we felt that it was a genre that really kind of could use a kick in the pants a bit, and we are just naturally drawn to sort of outsiders and sort of people on the fringe. And what we stumbled on with Ed Wood and Larry Flint particularly was that by writing a movie about people who are sort of on the outside looking in, it gives you so much more drama because their life is in constant conflict.
We were doing a rewrite on a science fiction movie about pop culture from Earth getting to a higher civilization on another planet and destroying that world. And so we were thumbing through different pop culture guides, and my wife had a book called The Encyclopedia of Bad Taste. And it just had articles on, you know, disco suspenders, and bad sitcoms from the 60s, and sugary cereal, and just, you know, stuff like that. And then there was a 2-page article about the Keens, and I was like, wow. And it just seemed like 2 great characters, great themes, sort of a crazy untold story. And I ran it by Larry, and he was like, this is great. Larry actually knew a little bit already because we have a friend, Matthew Sweet, who's the world's biggest collector of Keens and of Keen knockoffs. Yeah.
No, I mean, he basically, he was one of the first people ever to get on eBay. And so he kind of cornered the market when no one was buying these things. And so he owns like all kinds of crazy, it's like a hoarder. You go to his house and there's so much stuff.
Yeah, and so we kind of recognized that this would make a cool movie because, I mean, he's this Walter's this totally strong, dominating, charismatic, ultimately dark character. Margaret was this very introverted woman who's trying to express herself through her art, and then finally learns to sort of fight for her own voice. And then just the themes of high art and low art were so interesting to us. And so we did a lot of research. We went through microfiche of the old San Francisco Examiners and Chronicles. We pulled up all the Honolulu papers to get all the courtroom nonsense. And then once we felt like we had enough information where we could approach Margaret and talk to her intelligently, because we had to sort of understand the backstage versions of the stories. You know, when people give interviews, particularly years later, they quickly gloss over what happened, but we couldn't understand why she agreed to it the first time, why she agreed to it the second time, why she finally said, all right, they'll be your paintings. I mean, we wanted to know those steps. Also, this is the first time we've ever written a biopic script where we had to have the person's rights or we couldn't make the movie because we needed the paintings. And so we sort of arranged to fly up and visit Margaret in Sebastopol and do a sit-down and earn her trust.
Well, to pick up from there, Amy, I understand that you had sort of been a big fan of Tim Burton's even before you were into acting necessarily. And
well, I read the script the first time around, what was it, 4 or 5 years ago? Like that. Okay. And at the time, I was looking at playing stronger characters. I had been playing characters, and I was trying to find, kind of looking for people who were a little more confident to play. And so it didn't resonate with me. And then it came back around. I read it because I was like, oh, I remember this. I really liked it. And then I read it, and I think having been a mom now, I just saw it from a totally different perspective and really sort of understood her. And there was a quiet strength that I wanted to bring to her, and not just this victim, but this quiet strength that she had that I was really interested in. And then I actually wrote Tim. He didn't call me. It wasn't like I actually wrote him. I'm like, hey, I hear you're doing this, and here's why I want to do it, and would you consider talking to me about it? So I pursued it because I really, I don't know, I just felt like it was the time to play Margaret, you know. And
so the guys had met with Margaret, and I understand.
We met with Margaret back in 2003.
Right.
It took us 11 years to get to this point.
And was there a hesitancy on her part to have her story told, or what?
She's very, I mean, she's very much like it is in the movie. I mean, she's very skittish and she's very shy, and we kind of really had to win her trust. After all these years, she's still worried that people think that Walter was a real painter, because Walter never, never stopped talking about it. And when she got when she won that trial, it was sort of, buried in the back of the newspaper. It wasn't like front page news. So most people still come into the Keen Eyes Gallery and say they want, they want to meet Walter Keane. And so she was very worried that we were going to do like a he said, she said kind of story. And also she's still a very religious woman. She, we had to let her know that the religion would be part of the story and we weren't going to make fun of it. And we sort of embraced all that. And we had to win her trust. Yeah.
Well, and so then now all these years later, when you came aboard, Amy, did you also have the chance to pick her brain a little bit and get to spend some time with her?
Yeah, I flew up for a day, and she was kind enough to open her gallery and paint with me and talk to me. And again, you do feel when you meet her that like I wanted to handle her gently. And it's not that she's not a strong woman. You just know that she's reserved and she's introverted, and she's got this life in her eyes though that's very vibrant. But it took a while, for me to, I guess maybe win her trust or let her know that I was going to be respectful with who she was, and I wasn't interested in exploiting anything that she didn't want to tell. So she opened up to me and told me a lot about it, and it's still really alive in her. It's still, when she talks about it, it's really alive inside of her soul. And that's the thing that really struck me when I met her, was how much it still bothered her that she lied. Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I think is so wonderful about Amy's performance is she captures that quietness of Margaret, but she doesn't feel like a doormat. And it was interesting for us because we'd never written a movie from a female point of view, and this is on top of that a very odd thing where she's the protagonist of the movie. She is literally, we want to tell the story through Margaret's eyes, but Walter is the showboat. Walter is the guy who is active and running the plot and has more lines than anybody, but she is Margaret is the person that you care about. And so what Amy's able to do with just like a look, or it's almost like silent movie acting when I watch it. And as that for us, I think that's the biggest jump from the page to the screen, was seeing what Amy did. And it's like you're watching The Passion of Joan of Arc or something. This what this woman goes through.
And Scott, I guess one thing I wanted to talk about was just 20 years later, reuniting with a director on another very different film. I mean, I'm sure you guys have been in touch and worked on, talk about other things, but working with Tim Burton in 1994 versus today, what stood out to you?
Well, it's not like we hadn't actually seen him in 20 years.
Right.
We sort of had kind of a shadow existence with Tim, where we worked on projects where we either didn't get credit or the movies fell apart. And so there were a few of those along the way. I mean, in 1993, when we shot Ed Wood, we were just the schmoes from the Problem Child movies, and we were just so in awe of the fact that Tim was making this movie, and we would just go to the set every day, just sort of giddy, just watching, the magic come alive. 20 years later, the movie happened because we kept trying to get the movie made with us directing, and the movie kept falling apart. And we had brought in Tim as a producer, and then we said, you know what, we just need this thing to get onto the screen. It had literally been on our desk for 11 years. and so we went to Tim, and Tim was sort of at a point in his life or in his career where he was getting a little burnt out on the big movies that shoot for 110 days, and where he talks about those hundreds and hundreds of people and all those trailers and all those cranes and trucks, and you move slowly, and sort of the idea of getting sort of down and dirty, getting back to his roots was exciting to him. We had less money than we did 20 years ago in real dollars, and half as many days.
I want to ask Amy about what it's like working very closely, clearly, with two-time Oscar winner Christoph Waltz.
He's awesome. He really is. He just very easy to work with. I think we both got into a really wonderful place with these characters, and we didn't have a lot of time, so there was a lot of time spent on set. There was a lot of time spent in conversation, so that we were all coming from a very similar place, and It's funny, you guys talked about the pace of the film, but I never felt it. So I didn't know. It was a wonderful experience. It was so nice, and nothing felt rushed. Nothing felt that we were just brushing by it. Every moment was given its due, and I'm really appreciative of that. So I didn't feel it. So thank you guys, whatever that was. And but Christophe, there was just a lot of great conversations. He's so charming. He's just so charming and so smart and so honest and so genuine. So I would just pick his brain for hours. I'm sure he's like, oh, this girl. So I finally got a crossword book, so I would just not chat him up constantly. But I really, really enjoyed him very much.
And one thing people don't realize, too, is that we actually had to tone down Walter Keane at times, because that courtroom scene is for real. It is literally, Walter Keane did cross-examine himself, and you go back, look at the transcripts, and Walter Keane is literally out of his mind at that point. And the judge is trying to gonna duct tape his mouth, and I mean, it read like a Marx Brothers routine. And you know, and let's look at the transcripts, we were like, we can't just put all this in because it would be too silly. And so
we cut out Walter putting one of his ex-girlfriends on the stand, where they end up in a fight over whether he paid her off to be there with $10,000 and a free trip to Honolulu. And then she calls him an insulting pig. And then the judge is like banging his gavel like, all right, we're done for the day.
What blew us away is it might have been the best thing that ever happened in our career was last summer we were able to fly up to San Francisco and show Margaret a rough cut of the movie. And, you know, it was one of those things where she was in her late 70s when we got her rights, and now she's in her late 80s, and we really wanted her to see the film. And we showed it to her, and we sat in the row behind her on the side so we could watch the movie. And, you know, we were just waiting for any kind of little thing. Like that she watched it with her daughter Jane, who's still with her after all these years. And like at that beginning in that art show scene, there was you know, this sense of recognition. And we went over afterwards, and she was weeping. And it was so, you know, she really felt that we captured it. But what really surprised us, she was like, you really captured Walter. Oh my God, it was like being back with Walter. And we're like, oh, you know, I felt like it was like talking to Tina Turner. She's like, you put me back in the room with Ike.
Oh, God. Well, I do have something that she said, which I want to read back, which was about watching Amy play her, which was, quote, it was like seeing myself 50 years ago. She was absolutely perfect. So that must be kind of nice to hear from the person that you're playing.